I parked my truck at the sagging cattle gate off the logging road behind Bell Ridge Hollow, West Virginia, every other weekend just to get away from the city noise. No phone buzz, no traffic, just me and the quiet. That morning felt perfect, cool spring air with a light breeze cutting the chill as I slung my pack over my shoulder and started up the trail alone. 2 hours in, the path split at a fork that looked too clean, almost cut fresh. I took the right side. Right there was the first cairn, waist high with stones stacked dead precise. On top sat a red glass shard laid flat, catching light like it was sizing me up. I walked circles around it, scratching my head. No trail sign, no nothing that made sense. Kept moving anyway, but a prickle ran down my neck I could not shake. 30 minutes later I spotted the second cairn, exact same build, but sap oozed slow down one side, fresh and glistening like it just happened. My heart kicked up a notch. I scanned the trees hard, figuring maybe log cutters or kids messing around. Needed a break, so I dropped into a dry stream bed nearby, flat enough to sit. Pulled out my granola bar, chewed slow on beef jerky, bits of honey sticking to my teeth. Grabbed my phone for a quick call to my wife back home. "Hey babe, found these weird rock piles up here," I said. She laughed. "Locals marking spots probably. You okay?" Sounded dumb saying it out loud, but yeah, I told her fine. Then my GPS watch glitched, stuck showing the road from 30 minutes back even with full bars. Rebooted it quick, came alive again pinning my real spot. Wood sharpened after that. Every twig snap hit louder. Sweat beaded my forehead despite the cool air. Zipped my jacket higher and pushed on faster than planned. Then came a branch crack loud behind me, sharp like a gunshot. Spun around fast, nothing but empty trees. Pulse hammered my chest so hard I felt it in my throat. Pushed forward and there was the third cairn, base wrapped in a faded logger bandana, red and blue checks like the old West Virginia mill workers wore. Crouched down to touch the fabric, rough and dry. Checked my watch, about 2:15 in the afternoon, sun hanging heavy through the branches. Past a thick clump of oaks the ground gave way sudden. Slipped right into a wet hollow not on my map, mud sucking at my boots while the trail above stayed bone dry. Felt trapped quick, chest tightening. Texted my wife my spot. Slid into dip, staying sharp. She shot back fast. Promise ridge then straight home. Yeah, I typed, voice shaky in my head even typing it. Feet sank deeper with each step. Picked my way down using narrow deer trails, silent underfoot but slow going. Moss hung thick on rocks with edges too sharp, like someone chipped them deliberate. Heart stayed loud in my ears. Up ahead loomed an old cabin, roof crusted black with decades of soot, windows smeared so thick they reflected dark like midnight mirrors. Fresh boot prints tracked right to the door, deep with clear arch marks, someone heavy been there hours ago maybe. Crept around the side slow, pulse slamming ribs. Behind it in a muddy patch stood 5 rough wood stakes pounded in, each topped with loose stones still damp. Wet sap trailed down a couple, and red glass shards poked from the dirt circling every base, placed too neat for random. Stomach knotted hard. This was no animal work, pure human. Backed off quiet, mind racing on who would do this way out here. Rustle hit deliberate from the cabin's shadows, not wind. Peeked and saw a tall figure in full logger gear, axe slung over shoulder, duck low into the trees. Not some skinny animal, clear man with broad shoulders, had snapped my way for a split second before he melted silent into brush. Froze solid, blood pounding ears. Knew then I was watched whole time. Took off running opposite way, lungs burning quick from the mud climb. Fumbled phone mid-stride, called my wife whisper fast. "Babe, think stalker up here, tall logger guy just now." She freaked. "Share your GPS live, get out." Signal cut weak, call dropped. Every shadow turned hide spot now, trees closing in tight. Legs pumped harder, breath ragged, no choice but keep moving blind. Ran panicked circles, somehow ending back at that first cairn. Top stone gone clean, replaced by a tight circle of my own stuff, spare truck key fob I kept in pack side pocket, granola wrapper from lunch tossed earlier, laid out wreath style like claimed territory. Dropped to knees and puked right into leaves, acid burning throat. Screamed into woods, voice echoing empty back at me. GPS watch dead black now, no reboot. Phone rang once then died total, no service bars left. Mind flashed wife's old warning about local loggers feuding hikers over prime cuts, marking spots to scare folk off. Dots connected brutal. Ran downhill blind, legs jelly shaking, sweat soaking shirt cold against skin. Every rustle sounded footsteps closing. Had to reach the gate, no other play. Bursted out gasping to the cattle gate, truck right there, but next to stump sat a pair of boots dead match to mine, shiny clean with water puddles inside each one fresh. Left boot had my initials scratched deep into leather, done recent with a knife. Hands shaking bad, pulled a Polaroid half jammed in the left one, me clear as day eating lunch in that stream bed 2 hours back, shot from behind exact spot, timestamp stamped corner. No camera click ever heard. Dropped it fast, stomach heaving again. Faint truck engine growled nearby road edge, then, low rumble. Dove into my cab, keys fumbling twice before catching ignition. Glanced up, saw logger truck silhouette idling tree line, headlights flick once before I slammed gear and peeled gravel spraying wild. Tires screamed as I bolted down the road, mirror empty but heart still exploding. Drove 10 miles straight to that roadside diner off the highway, wood walls and low-hanging bulbs inside. Collapsed in a booth, hands clanking the coffee mug so hard it rattled saucer. Waitress came over, pen squeaking her pad. "You okay, mister?" Looked like saw a ghost. Spilled it all quick, cairns, cabin stakes, logger figure, boots with my initials, that damning photo. She nodded slow. Heard of Jed the logger, feuds hikers stealing his cuts, marks territory to run him off. Called my wife first from their landline, voice cracking relief hearing her. "I'm out babe, heading home." Then dialed park ranger station, gave full rundown, boots size, photo details, GPS coords from memory. She urged stay put. 2 days later rangers called back, raided Jed's camp 5 miles off trail, matched those exact boots and my scratched initials to tool marks, Polaroid developed from his stash. Nabbed him cold for stalking and threats, territory grab busted wide. Felt relief wash heavy, like breathing first real time. Now I stick to marked trails only, always ping location to my wife live, report odd cairns or prints to rangers day one. Woods feel peaceful again when you stay smart and speak up early. Late one night before the trip, I had been scrolling through an old hiking forum I used to check for quiet routes. It was a long, messy thread about abandoned trails somewhere near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. Most of the posts were just people complaining about rotting bridges or washed-out paths, but at the bottom of that thread there was one reply that looked different. It had no capital letters, no punctuation, just a single, breathless paragraph. The person wrote about a trail that led to a small, crumbling ranger cabin and a metal fence rusted into the side of a ridge. There were no coordinates, no links to maps, no GPS waypoints. There were only 3 blurry photos, each showing the same chain-link fence half swallowed by vines, leaning into the hill like something had pushed it from the other side. The last line stopped me completely. It said, "Turn around if you hear clicking, don't keep going. I'm serious." At first, I thought it was just some joke, a creepypasta someone had pasted into a real hiking forum. I almost closed the page, but then I read it again. The tone was too flat, too exhausted, almost like someone had typed it in a hotel room at 3 in the morning, eyes still open from adrenaline. I saved the post, tagged it with, "weird but maybe real," and closed my laptop. Over the next few weeks, I kept opening it again, staring at those photos, wondering if someone had actually been there or if it was just a fiction written in the wrong place. By the time June arrived, I had a full week off work and no plans. I had just finished a long stretch of night shifts at a warehouse on the edge of a small town in Northern Virginia, and I needed to get away from the flat, warehouse park lights and the sound of delivery trucks backing up at 3 in the morning. The mountains felt like the opposite of that world, quiet and mostly empty. I told myself I was just going for a short backpacking trip, a chance to stretch my legs and test some gear. I packed a small backpack with a headlamp, an extra flashlight, a small knife, a coil of thin rope, trail snacks, and a lightweight bivy sack I had never used before. I drove for about 6 hours, music low, the highway humming under my tires, until the 2-lane road started to narrow and the land began to rise. I took a turn onto a fire road, drove a little deeper until my phone signal blinked off and the map on my GPS screen froze, then I stopped in a small, dusty clearing and set up my tent. For the first time in years, there was no network, no text messages, no notifications, nothing. It was just me and the trees, the occasional sound of a bird, the wind moving through the leaves. That night, lying in the tent, I opened the forum post one last time by the light of my headlamp. The fence in the photos looked exactly like something you would find in this kind of place, old, crooked, half-decayed, blocking a path that no one wanted to follow. I read that last line again. Turn around if you hear clicking, don't keep going. I'm serious. I closed my eyes and told myself that tomorrow, I would just take a short walk, test the trail, and see if it was real or just a story someone had written to scare people online. The next morning was cloudy and cool. I packed my gear again, this time attaching a small water bottle and a packet of trail mix, and I walked back to the main road, then turned onto the narrow track that led deeper into the mountains. The fire road soon faded into a barely visible path, with wide, uneven tire ruts and low branches scratching at my arms as I passed. After a while, the road curved sharply, and the dense forest closed back in around me. I found the landmarks in the post one by one. The first was 2 birch trees that grew close together and split at the base like a wishbone, their pale bark peeling in thin strips. Beyond them, the trail crossed a small, shallow creek that split into 2 branches. I paused there for a moment, checking the notes I had scribbled onto a piece of paper before I left home. The post had said, "Take the left path," so I stepped onto the side that looked slightly less overgrown and continued uphill. The ground rose in a long, uneven curve that wrapped around the side of the ridge, like a horseshoe pressed into the hill. The higher I climbed, the more the air felt still, the trees closer together, the understory thinner. There were fewer birds, fewer insects buzzing, almost as if the forest had hushed itself. The only sounds were my own breathing, the dry rustle of my clothes, and the crunch of small stones under my boots. I checked my phone once, but the screen only showed a red, no service icon, the GPS signal flickering and then dying. After about 40 minutes of steady climbing, the trail opened into a small, uneven clearing. On the far side, a low, wood-paneled building leaned forward like a tired animal. The roof had partly collapsed, the door dangled on one hinge, and the windows were shattered, their glass scattered across the rotting porch. A wooden sign, split by moss and time, lay half buried in the dirt, the words still barely legible, Crow Hill Ranger Outpost. I had never seen that name on any official map or trail chart. When I had checked online before leaving, every ranger station within a 20-mile radius had a clear location, marked with a small icon and a brief description. This place did not exist in any of those lists. It felt like someone had painted this sign years ago, then walked away and let the forest take it back. I walked around the side of the cabin, careful not to step on the loose boards or the sharp glass fragments. Behind the building, past a cluster of moss-covered boulders, I saw the metal fence. It was exactly like the one in the photos, tall, rusted, the chain links tangled in thick vines, the bottom bent outward as if something had squeezed through underneath. The mesh hung loosely, the posts leaning, the paint gone in patches, the metal stained with old moisture. I knelt down and looked at the gap where the fence had warped. The ground under it was flat, packed with dirt and small stones. Someone had definitely passed through here, not just once. I checked my watch. It was just past 11 in the morning. I still had light, still had time. I told myself that I would go a little further, test the path, and if anything felt wrong, I would turn back. I took a deep breath, then slid under the fence, the metal scraping against the rocks, my backpack catching for a moment before I pulled it free. The trail beyond the fence was almost invisible. It was just a faint line through the undergrowth, a shallow impression in the dirt where boots or animals had worn the grass down. The slope grew steeper, the air cooler, the trees fewer. I walked quietly, my boots tapping on the loose stones, the sound echoing faintly between the rocks. After a while, the ridge narrowed until it felt like I was walking along the spine of the mountain. On the north-facing side of the slope, just where the land dipped into a small, rocky hollow, I saw it. A thin crack in the limestone, barely wide enough for a person to pass through. The rock was dark, uneven, the edges jagged, covered with thin streaks of moss and fine dust. I stopped, took off my backpack, and slipped my headlamp over my forehead, then turned it on. The beam cut through the dim light, revealing the narrow opening. I took a small piece of rope from my pack, tied one end around a loose rock near the entrance, and let the other end fall toward the back of my pack so that I could use it to retrace the route if the light failed. I had read that before, not just in forums, but in every basic cave safety guide I had ever seen. I turned sideways and stepped into the crack, the rock scraping against the side of my backpack, my shoulders brushing the cold stone. Once inside, the temperature dropped quickly. The air felt damp and heavy, like it had pressed into the rock over many years. There was a faint, mineral smell, like wet stone mixed with old dust. The sound of my breathing echoed slightly, bouncing off the walls. I took a few steps forward, the tunnel curving gently downward, the floor uneven, covered in small stones and loose dirt. The beam of my headlamp cut a thin path through the dark, and the outline of the walls began to appear. After about 20 minutes of slow, careful walking, the passage opened into a wider chamber. The ceiling rose higher, the space felt less cramped. I stopped and swept the light across the walls. The limestone was covered with deep scratches, lines, and shapes carved into the surface. There were spirals, jagged circles, rough stick figures with elongated limbs, some with too many fingers, some with heads that looked like they had been twisted or flattened. One figure seemed to be reaching toward a smaller one, its arms extended, its body leaning forward as if it were trying to protect or pull the other away. I took out my phone, switched on the flashlight, and raised it to take a picture. The light of the headlamp flickered for a second, then steadied. I pointed the camera at the closest group of carvings, zoomed in slightly, and pressed the button. The screen flashed white, then returned to normal. At that moment, something shifted in the air. I turned back toward the tunnel, the rope still in my hand, and that was when I heard it. It was a sharp, hollow sound, like a small stone hitting rock. It came from the direction of the passage behind me, not from the chamber itself. I froze for a second, my hand tightening around the rope. The sound echoed faintly through the tunnel, then there was a pause. Then it came again. Click. Another short pause. Click. Then another, click. It was not random. It had a rhythm, like someone was tapping a small object against the wall, or a loose bolt shifting in the dark. I stood very still, listening, my heart beating a little faster. The sound did not come from the opening near the entrance, it felt slightly deeper in the passage, somewhere along the path I had just walked. I took a small step backward, then another, still holding the rope, my eyes fixed on the tunnel. The rope jerked suddenly in my hand, as if someone had pulled on the other end from somewhere inside. I let go of it almost instantly. The rope swung against the stone once, then fell still. The clicking stopped. For a moment, I could not hear anything except my own breathing and the faint echo of my own movement. I stood there, waiting, my flashlight trained on the tunnel, my hand hovering over the knife on my belt. The rope lay coiled on the ground, the end that had been tied to the rock near the entrance still hanging loosely. My mind ran through a few explanations. Maybe the rope had caught on a loose rock and the weight had shifted, maybe the rope had snagged on something and fallen, maybe the sound was just a rock shifting in the wall or a small piece of metal catching the light. I heard a quick movement near the edge of the beam, low to the ground. It was only a glimpse, a pale shape, a long, thin hand sliding out of view around a corner of the tunnel wall, then disappearing. I did not see a face, did not see eyes, just a pale arm, long fingers, then nothing. I turned and started running. I did not think, did not calculate my steps, I just pushed my body forward, my feet hitting the uneven floor, the walls closing in around me as I entered tighter sections of the passage. The beam of my headlamp swung wildly, hitting the ceiling, the walls, then the floor, the light flickering as I jolted over the rocks. My clothes brushed against the stone, my backpack bouncing against my back, the rope swinging loose behind me. The slope felt steeper than it had before, the turns tighter. I slid on a patch of loose gravel, fell onto my side, and skidded down a short, rocky incline. My flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled away, the beam spinning in a circle for a moment before it clicked off. I scrambled forward on my hands and knees, my palms scraping against the rough stone, my fingers fumbling until I found the flashlight. I clicked it once, then again, and the light came back on, weak but steady. My hands were shaking as I pushed myself to my feet. I was in a smaller chamber, the ceiling lower, the floor uneven. I could not see a clear exit in the beam, the tunnel split in two directions, the walls curving away in opposite paths. I turned to the left, then heard the sound again. Click. It was closer this time, almost directly behind me. I turned around slowly, the light moving in a narrow arc across the wall. The sound came again. Click. Something scraped along the stone floor, a low, dragging sound, then another click, then another. It was not the sound of water dripping, not the sound of loose rocks shifting. It was the sound of something moving slowly, deliberately, from one side of the passage to the other. I stepped back against the wall, my back pressing against the cold stone, my breath quickening. I heard a faint voice, a whisper, not from in front of me but from behind the wall, as if someone were speaking through the rock. The words were broken, almost incoherent, but I caught a few syllables. Go home, the voice said, then click, and then, clearly, turn around. I realized suddenly that the clicking might not be a warning to me. It might be what the person in the forum had heard, what had made them turn around. I took another step backward, my foot hitting a loose stone, the sound echoing loudly. The clicking stopped. I waited, listening, my heart pounding in my chest. After a few seconds, the sound returned, this time slightly farther away, then fading, like someone walking in the opposite direction. I did not wait. I ran again, choosing the path that seemed to slope upward, my flashlight pointed at the ground, the beam bouncing with every step. The walls pressed in, the ceiling dipped, the air felt colder, the sound of my own movement echoing back at me. I hit a tight spot where the rock narrowed, my shoulders scraping against the sides, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. I pushed forward, the flashlight beam catching a small crack of light ahead, a faint line of daylight cutting through the dark. I crawled toward it, my hands and knees scraping over the rough stone, my pants tearing against the edges. I pulled myself through the crack, the rock cutting into my hip, then I dropped out onto the ridge, the cold air rushing over my skin. I turned and looked back at the cave, the narrow opening now just a dark slit in the hillside, the rusted fence still visible a short distance away. I did not see anyone moving near the entrance. I stood up, my legs shaking, my hands still holding the flashlight. I walked quickly down the slope, my boots slipping on the loose stones, the forest closing back in as I reached the path that led back to the ranger cabin. I passed the cracked sign, the broken door, the empty windows. I did not stop. I kept walking until I reached the fire road, the sound of the trees softening, the land opening up again. I jogged the last few hundred yards until I saw my car, the metal glinting in the weak afternoon light. I opened the door, threw my backpack onto the passenger seat, and slid into the driver's side, breathing heavily. I sat there for a long time, my hands resting on the steering wheel, my headlights still off, the only sound the faint hum of the engine idling. I did not know how long I stayed there, maybe 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, but I listened carefully, checking the mirror, the door handles, the trees around the clearing. Nothing moved. I did not wait. I ran again, choosing the path that seemed to slope upward, my flashlight pointed at the ground, the beam bouncing with every step. The walls pressed in, the ceiling dipped, the air felt colder, the sound of my own movement echoing back at me. I hit a tight spot where the rock narrowed, my shoulders scraping against the sides, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. I pushed forward, the flashlight beam catching a small crack of light ahead, a faint line of daylight cutting through the dark. I crawled toward it, my hands and knees scraping over the rough stone, my pants tearing against the edges. I pulled myself through the crack, the rock cutting into my hip, then I dropped out onto the ridge, the cold air rushing over my skin. I turned and looked back at the cave, the narrow opening now just a dark slit in the hillside, the rusted fence still visible a short distance away. I did not see anyone moving near the entrance. I stood up, my legs shaking, my hands still holding the flashlight. I walked quickly down the slope, my boots slipping on the loose stones, the forest closing back in as I reached the path that led back to the ranger cabin. I passed the cracked sign, the broken door, the empty windows. I did not stop. I kept walking until I reached the fire road, the sound of the trees softening, the land opening up again. I jogged the last few hundred yards until I saw my car, the metal glinting in the weak afternoon light. I opened the door, threw my backpack onto the passenger seat, and slid into the driver's side, breathing heavily. I sat there for a long time, my hands resting on the steering wheel, my headlights still off, the only sound the faint hum of the engine idling. I did not know how long I stayed there, maybe 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, but I listened carefully, checking the mirror, the door handles, the trees around the clearing. Nothing moved.